So as Tim mentioned, Mario Carreno probably needs no introduction. Many of you have probably worked with him on the school construction project. Mario is another wonderful member of my team. As a Deputy Commissioner for Instructional Programs, a lot falls under my purview, and I'm just fortunate to work with such a wonderful group of smart, caring people. And Mario goes above and beyond by also participating in the school committee for Lincoln Schools. So without further ado, I know we're your last presentation before your annual meeting, so I'll have Mario come on up.
Great, thank you everyone. It's great to be here at the Crown Plaza at the annual meeting. I'm embarrassed to say it's my first one, even though I've been a member of the school committee for 2 years now. So one of the things that I'll go through this presentation, which is also unique, I'll do a state perspective, but I can also relate locally in Lincoln to give you, boots on the ground stories, as well as what I've seen across the state. One of the things before we begin, and I'll start with a question, does anyone know what the biggest challenge or barrier to successful school construction projects or school facilities is? Does anyone have a guess of what that is? It's close. This is close. The answer is actually low expectations. That for far too long we allow things to just be there. I'll give you a story locally. When I first started on Lincoln School Committee, and I don't know if all of you have done this, but you should walk through all of your buildings. I was surprised, and again, I've been at Rhode for 13 years, going to different building committee meetings, town council meetings, school committees, how many people have not walked through all of their buildings. The very first thing I did, and I think it was like 2 days after I was appointed, I went to Salesville, which is where my kids go, Salesville Elementary School. And when I walked into the library, the one word, and I've used this at public meetings to describe that space, was embarrassing. It was an embarrassing space. We had office furniture from the 1990s in an elementary school library. The furniture had been there so long, it had duct tape all over it, and it was really embarrassing. One of the first things I did was, again, to create an awareness to help raise this bar. I brought the budget board to that room, brought the town council, sent emails to the town administrator, to the school committee. And within a few months, we had a resolution at the budget board. We got both of them funded, and then just this past December, we got the other two funded. So we were able to correct it, but part of it is raising the bar. Like warm, safe, and dry is too low a bar. That's a 1980s mentality, and we're in the year 2023. So just keep that in mind, that you really need to create an awareness and think bigger than what has just been there. What's been there is not good enough. That's one of the themes for this presentation. The other two themes would be, don't just point out problems, but also bring solutions. Towards the end of this, we'll get into the funding. It's key to have a basic understanding of how the state reimburses or pays for projects, because that's really the equalizer. So the state doesn't reimburse for roads or bridges or police stations, but the state does reimburse for school construction projects, which makes it really attractive, especially with the temporary bonuses, to get the town to put money forward that they otherwise wouldn't have. That's a key one, and we'll discuss that. And the third piece is, you need to work with the town. Communities who say it's the district versus the town are the ones that lose. It's the district and the town, because ultimately, while school committees have care and control of facilities, if you want a bond or you want some extra resources, you need to work with the town. If you don't do that, you won't get a cent. So let's begin with this presentation. So very briefly, this is the history on school construction, and it's really evolved over the last 10 years. So for the first roughly 50 years, we had, it was very basic. There wasn't even an application. You would just submit a form to Rhode, you'd get it approved, you'd complete the project, and then you would receive reimbursement. The average rate back then was about 30% reimbursement. It was only for bonds. And again, for even without an application process, we didn't have much work. Again, this goes back to low expectations where, oh, it's fine, the buildings were fine where I went there. Why do we need to invest in it? And for far too long, that's been the mentality. Fast forward to 2007, which we'll get into details in a minute, but the school construction regulations were adopted for Rhode. We then briefly entered into a moratorium on school construction, where there was no projects were approved except for health and safety for about a 4 or 5 year period. And then now we've really have reached this boom in construction. Really started with Governor Raimondo and Treasurer Magaziner back in 2016 when they lifted the moratorium, they created the School Building Authority, they added new funding sources, and then now the state voters recently have approved not one but two $250 million bonds, which have really helped school construction projects throughout the state. So the first piece, and this is actually foundational to our program, is the school construction regulations. Prior to 2007, there were no regulations, which means there was no standard. So what we find is that in some communities, just doing something on the cheap is fine, and in others, it's completely unacceptable. This allowed us to do an apples-to-apples comparison. It also allowed the state to ensure that any investments that the state makes are also of quality and will be there for about 50 years. So for new schools, the expected life is 50 years. That wasn't the case before 2007. I've also set this presentation up so we'll speak to the approval piece first, we'll pause for questions, and then we'll do the financing piece for the second half. So this is, and everyone should know this at a high level, when you begin educational facility master planning to understand how to invest into your schools, the best and easiest way to look at this is treat this as the four legs of a stool. So the first piece is the facility conditions of your existing buildings. How many buildings do you have? Where are they located? What conditions are they in? Like, do they need new roofs? So you do a great understanding of your building stock. That is one of the legs of the stool to help you make decisions. The second one is enrollment or demographics. And it's not how many kids have you served or do you serve, it's how many will you serve. Why is that critical? So Rhode Island is a state who's had a declining population. We're down 22,000 students since the year 2003. Think about that, statewide. That's a 15% decline, and it's projected to continue to decline. So if you don't have, as an example, if you don't have 10,000 students and are going to be down to 7 or 8,000, we'll plan accordingly, right? Your resource can be concentrated in fewer buildings than spreading it out in buildings you may not need. The third leg is educational programming. Do you have the spaces that you need or want to deliver what you want to teach? So if you want to teach automotive, do you have those auto bays? If you want to teach science or outdoor, do you have outdoor classrooms? Do you have STEM spaces? Do you have what you need to deliver your educational program? That's the third leg. Then the fourth leg, which is ultimately the most important one, is financing. You need to understand what is the realm of reality. So when you, as a district, begin a master planning process, one of the first things you should do is engage the town and just understand the range of what is available. A master planning process without parameters has no value, because what you'll do is you'll spend all this time doing visioning sessions and feel-good sessions on something that you can't even deliver to the stakeholders. So I would definitely, early on in the process, figure out what is available and then do this exercise within that, and you'll have a very fruitful outcome. And usually, the data will lead you to where your projects are. Again, I'll shift back locally in Lincoln. We are actually doing this now, because two of the things that we have identified recently are, number one is we don't have any STEM or science labs in any of our elementary schools. So if the state has three primary metrics for proficiency, English, math, and science, well, in Lincoln's case, science is our lowest of the three, and I asked the town at a recent meeting, how do you teach science without science labs? How can you do that? So that has risen into our next application, and they've agreed to fund that. The other piece is we have, like many old elementary schools, CAFA gymatoriums, where you have one space that tries to be everything and a space that tries to be three things. Well, it doesn't do any of them well. It actually doesn't work at all. Using data and the school construction regulations, we can see that we offer kids in Lincoln 1/3 of the space they should have for their cafeteria and for their gym. At Lonsdale Elementary School in particular, the kids who have gym in third period, they cut about 20 minutes of their PE time out of the way because they have to convert it to lunch. Then they can't run PE after lunch because it takes an hour to clean the gym. And then to begin with, that space is like this big. It's really challenging. I think Marianne has a good story for this, because Lonsdale was built at a time when kids would go home for lunch. Like, they wouldn't even have lunch there. So it doesn't work. we try to make it everything, and it actually accomplishes nothing. So again, we got that in for Lincoln. The other piece that we looked at is our elementary schools. While the state is declining, Lincoln's enrollments have been increasing, especially at our elementary schools where we have some overcrowding. The answer for overcrowding is not always just build more classrooms. It's also rethinking existing spaces and how you use them. Our cafeteria is severely underused. I mean, in theory. So if you look at North Providence, which they did a great job with Olney and McGuire, but their cafeteria, because it's a standalone cafeteria, it's designed in a way that you can use it for first period, second period, as a group learning space. It's a really nice space. The kids leave, they eat lunch, they clean it, and immediately you can begin using it again. So the answer is not just building more and more classrooms, it's rethinking the spaces you have so you can use them. So that's our three-prong approach in Lincoln: is STEM rooms, renovating the cafeterias to make them also usable for learning, and then building the gyms. The other reason for that, especially the gyms, as many of you like to know, is that sports sell. So if you need to approach the town or you need to approach voters on something, athletics will always get approved. So, it's not a bad thing to lead with athletics and then tie in a few other things behind it, and you'll likely will get it. Okay, so this is just a high-level overview. It's available on our website as well. Our application process is known as Stage 1 and Stage 2, and I'll get to the details in a minute. Essentially, you identify your needs in Stage 1, and then you find solutions to those needs in Stage 2. There are a variety of both state and local approvals that are needed to get you across the finish line. And these are outlined here. You have Rhode has to approve the work. You have the school committee has to approve Stage 2. The town council or city council has to approve it. And then if you're going for a bond, you need both General Assembly approval and voter approval. So there's a variety of approvals that are needed in this process, which usually takes 1 to 2 years. The temporary bonuses have really compressed these timelines for most communities. Perhaps a little faster and more aggressive than we would like, but I get, if the alternative is to not do anything because the town needs the bonuses, then you compress the timeline. So Stage 1 is just, what are the conditions of your building? We want them all listed out there. We want them on a map. And actually, what I would venture to say is the most important part of Stage 1 is the building committee. Who is on the building committee? And while it sounds counterintuitive, the most successful building committees are the ones who load their committee with people from the town or the city. Again, if you need the town council or city council to approve it, you need to involve them early. In most cases, school committees will approve whatever's put forward because obviously if you want to, I've never seen a school committee reject their own plan. It doesn't make sense. But I've seen many town councils and city councils reject their plans. So I would advise, again, when thinking of the composition of your school building committee, include as many municipal representatives as possible. The most successful ones, even though it's painful and it takes longer, are the ones who have it. So again, let's shift to Lincoln again. So we have 2 committees at the moment. We have one for a physical education center, which has 20 people on it, which is perhaps 10 more than would be ideal for that. But it's split evenly. The school department appointed 10 names, and the town appointed 10. And you know what? That project is on time. It's on budget. I think it's even ahead of schedule, Mary Ann. And it's a great story. We have a revolving fund committee that we've established. Again, it's almost split in half, 4 and 4, and it works very well. Things have been going very, very well in Lincoln. But again, it's because we include the town early on in everything. Stage 2 is the solutions to those needs. So as part of Stage 2, this is where you'll really finalize how much money is available. You'll have to hire an architect, an engineer, some cost estimators. This is where you do schematic design, you estimate it out, because these are the materials we will bring to the Rhode Council to approve. And once you get approval, then you're eligible for reimbursement. That's the big hook here. The reason people come through our process is for money. Like it boils down to that. And then once you receive approval, we still have to review the projects during design three different times. We have a design review portal that allows districts to upload their information. Small projects go really quickly. We don't try to slow anyone down. And the purpose of our reviews are not to, we're not the building code office. It's really to find ways to improve your project. We have a lot of master planners at Rhode who are really, really good at this, and almost every project that comes through actually gets recommendations that are better than what was originally thought of, and it's been a really successful process. So before I get to funding, do we have any questions on stage 1, 2, or 3? This is easy. All right. So now this is the piece where you don't need to memorize this, but at least have a general understanding of what I'm going to explain here, because when you approach a city or town, you should have an idea of the amount of state aid that's available. Why do I say that? Because, and again, we'll use Lincoln as an example. If Lincoln's base rate for their current application is, let's say, 40%, and they can get 10% bonuses, well, when we approach the town, we don't speak to it as an $11 million project. We use the sale price because the state's putting in $5.5 million. It's a $5.5 million project that actually gives us $11 million of benefit. And when you frame it in those terms, it looks much different than an $11 million project. It's a much smaller project. I would also have an understanding, and you can email for this if you don't have it, is understand if you have existing school debt that is coming off the books in the next few years, it's been really easy to time it. So if you have debt that's leaving the books and you can replace it with new debt at a higher reimbursement rate, it's a much easier sell than that. That's how we got, so this past summer we met in North Providence because they had bonds from their middle school coming off the books. They were able to replace the middle school bond that was getting 30% reimbursement with a new bond of $125 million that's going to get 80% reimbursement, and it was like almost a zero tax increase in North Providence. So again, not everyone has the fortune of getting 80%, not everyone has bonds coming off the books, but at least have an understanding of that. So when you go to the town or the city, you're not just bringing problems to them, but you also have some sort of solution to address those needs. So let's start with school housing aid. So the vast majority of projects are funded through this mechanism. This is a reimbursement-based program. You pay $1 million a year and you're a 50% community. We'll pay $500,000 per year. You pay $500,000 per year, and that is over the life of the bond. For smaller projects, which are known as capital reserve projects, or projects where you have cash on hand, the reimbursement schedule is much more aggressive. It's no more than 3 years. So if you do a $100,000 project, you submit for reimbursement, you turn around, we'll give you back $50,000 or half of it within 9 months. It's a really quick turnaround. What communities such as Providence, Central Falls, and Lincoln have done is have created revolving fund agreements with their town where any housing aid for capital reserve projects goes into an account that just pays for more school construction projects, which can then get more reimbursement, and it just keeps revolving back and forth. This past December, we got it approved in Lincoln. We had a financial town meeting, and it was unanimous. I think it was 280-0 to create this and then fund the projects because it makes too much sense to not do it. So if you don't have that, I would strongly encourage looking into it. The reason it's necessary is because per state law, all state payments go to the municipality, not to the school district. So without these agreements, they don't have to give it back to you. So just keep that in mind. But for many of them, when you show them how it works, it's all right. That makes sense. So again, let's use the Lincoln example. Lincoln sold a building to a charter school for $5 million. The town gave that to the district as seed money. We are going to do $5 million of work. We're going to get back $2.5 million, which will turn around and do more work, which will get back $1.25 million, and so on. So that $5 million investment in selling the school to Blackstone Valley Prep is going to get us $10 million of work over 5 years at no request of taxes from the taxpayers. It's just an asset that we had sold, and it's been really, really beneficial. Providence and Central Falls, who get higher reimbursement rates, can actually get something like 11 or 12 times return on investment. It's really something, and Pawtucket should look at that as well. But if you have any questions on that, we've done one-pagers for communities who've asked for it, but I would highly recommend that. If there's a takeaway, is to create some sort of revolving fund so that those funds go back to the district to do more work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in Rhode Island. There's also, so housing aid, the reimbursement rates are set in statute using a wealth ratio. Essentially, it's the wealth of your town with the number of kids in your town as compared to the wealth of the state as measured by property values and the enrollment of the state. And every year it's calculated, it's on our website. The minimum you can get is 35%, so even again, if you're a wealthy community, you can still get 35% off of your projects before we get into bonuses, and we'll do that in a minute, which again makes it attractive to towns. If you make a compelling case to sell it, the fact that you're going to get 35, even now through the bonus up to 52.5% off for a well-to-do community, that makes it really compelling to get these things through. But again, it's reimbursement based with a wealth formula, and the majority of projects go through this mechanism. The minimum is 35%. Charter schools get 30%, and then it goes up to 96%. I think Central Falls and Providence are up there. However, that's also deceiving because housing aid is reimbursement based. Just because you get 96% back, well, you need money to get money back. So even Central Falls, we looked at a 10-year period, didn't do a single project through this mechanism because they didn't have any money at all, despite getting 96% reimbursement, which led to the creation of this program, the School Building Authority Capital Fund, which, unlike housing aid, which is reimbursement-based, this provides money in real time for projects. So as you send in invoices, we pay you your base rate. So in the example of Central Falls, let's say they were doing a $100,000 project and are expecting to get $96,000 back in reimbursement. Well, they can't spend $100,000 and wait a year to get their money. They need it on each invoice. So what they do, let's say, for example, they send a $10,000 invoice to Rhode. We will immediately pay within 1 day. We are the fastest paying state agency in Rhode Island, the School Building Authority at Rhode, and we will pay them their $9,600 within a day, which then means they only need to come up with $400 of that $10,000 invoice, as opposed to come up with all 10 and then get reimbursed. So it's been really helpful for them. This has been around since 2016. The focus has changed over the last 6-7 years. We've done school safety, we've done shovel ready, we've done facility equity, we've done outdoor classrooms. We have a bunch of new programs that are out there that have been funded by this, but this allows, again, real-time funding, which reduces the barriers for some communities. And it's not just Central Falls. I'm not mean to be like West Warwick has had challenges. Coventry has had challenges. I see her over there. But Pawtucket, others. So this has been really beneficial to communities to get projects moving forward. Oh. And then the third major funding source is the pay-as-you-go funding from the statewide bonds. So in 2018, voters approved a $250 million bond, which was distributed to 43 LEAs across our state. And now we have the second one, which was approved this past November. The formula for this, and just like at a high level, it's 15% of what you would expect the state to give you through housing aid is coming through the statewide bond. So let's do an example to help illustrate this. So let's say you apply for a $100 million new high school, and you're a 50% community, which means you would expect the state to pay you $50 million. Normally, that $50 million would be spread over a 20-year period. In this case, 15% of the whole thing is available upfront with cash. So this is not necessarily more money, which is the next slide. This is money sooner. This allows you to delay bonding. It allows you to use it to pay for the architect and design, and it really helps you move your project while you're waiting for your bond to be issued. And again, this has been around since 2018, and we have another bond that was approved just a few months ago. And I would say that when you are picking your projects as a local taxpayer, I would try to prioritize those that can check as many of these boxes as possible, because these are temporary. We understand that your needs likely, not likely, they do exceed available bonding capacity. This is like, if you look at your district over a 20-year period, let's say a long-term master plan, you can't do everything at once. But instead, what you can do is at least grab the bonuses that are available now so that you can actually do more in the out years. And this has been a really critical piece in selling projects to municipalities, is the extra state aid that's available. Communities that, a minimum share community of 35% can get up to 4 of these. Per statute, you're capped at 52.5%. Communities who are above 40% can get the full 20 bonus points, but each of those are worth 5 points. Senator De Palma likely mentioned this morning, those are set to expire at the end of this year for work that you have to at least start your project. There's been a momentum at the General Assembly to extend those. We have supply chain issues, we have COVID delays, we have rising costs, that it would make sense to spread those out. We have, at the moment, 23 LEAs looking to get approval this December because of that, which is by far a record. But what we at the state are really concerned about is having those 23 LEAs plus others who've been recently approved all bidding at the same time for work. There's simply not enough workers to do this, which means prices will go up. So we have been making the case that even if we extend these 6 months to align within the end of the fiscal year, it'll at least spread out the bids, which will help. A bill that was introduced on last Thursday by the Speaker would do a year-long extension. So I think that would be good. There's a momentum there. There's also, and I'm sure I don't want to repeat everything he mentioned, but there's energy bonuses being considered, mechanisms to reimburse interest before projects complete. But we'll see in the next 6 weeks what shakes out as part of the state budget. So keep your eyes open for that. We will likely do an email blast, like we usually do, of legislative changes. But I know a lot of people are interested in watching this because there's a lot of work happening throughout our state. This is just a summary of approvals over the last few years. Just for context, during the moratorium, there was a year, I think it was fiscal year 14, we approved statewide only $14 million worth of work. In FY22, we approved almost $1 billion. So that's the level of pent-up demand that there was in our state. Over the last 5 years, it's $2.3 billion. We expect close to $1.5 billion this year. Again, there's 23 LEAs moving forward in December all over the state. We have Providence, Pawtucket. We have Middletown looking to do things, Barrington, East Greenwich, Lincoln, Cumberland. It's really across the state from east to west, north to south. A lot are doing it, but there's still more work to be done. So, we're doing a great job, but there's, the need again exceeds what's there. Just some updates, and there's links. If you send a link online, you can click on these, but some different things that have come out over the last couple of years. The first one is Renewing the Dream. It's a report that we issued back in February of 22 that really spoke to the $2.3 billion in approvals. It speaks to our new programs. It speaks to initiatives that we're doing across the state. It's a really quick read if you're interested in looking at it. The others are some of the new programs that have come out over the last year. What we've done with the Capital Fund is not just roll it into applications, but we're trying to be really targeted with where it goes. The very first one of these programs was the Arts Initiative, which came out in May of 22, where the money was given to every district on a per student basis at 100% reimbursement. So again, there's no barrier here. The only condition is you spend it on art, because art is one of the first things that are cut from any budget. As a reminder, these expire June 30th of 23. You just have to invoice, encumber, do something with it. Many districts haven't used this, so please, email your business manager, email your superintendent, and make sure that you spend it. At 100% reimbursement, it is wrong to give this back. The second piece is Learning Inside Out. This is a new program that was launched in December of 22 for outdoor classrooms. This was applications-based. So unlike the first one, which we just gave it to everyone, we wanted to make sure for this one that those who actually wanted the classrooms came forward to get them. These will be approved by the council May 23rd, and I believe we're able to fund 93 of them throughout the state, so it's almost a third of the state will have outdoor classrooms over the next 2 to 3 years. So that's a great story. We're also applying for a federal grant that if we win, we'll be able to offer money to every school. So hopefully the goal is that everyone will have an outdoor classroom in Rhode Island. If you're an urban district, suburban district, it doesn't matter. You can still be out there because the environmental education impacts everyone. The menu for success is one that I'm really excited about, is the 13 high schools who have culinary programs. The state is giving them food trucks, because food trucks, you can tie in not just the culinary kids, but you have the automotive kids, there's graphic design, businesses, and it's a real fun thing that kids have really been excited about. These orders have gone in. I think the first, Lincoln just got theirs this past week. I see Marianne. Coventry and East Providence are the next two, but between now and August, all 13 will be delivered. And then if you want to save the date, October 21st at Chase Farm, the 13 food trucks are going to compete for the Governor's Cup to see what the best item is. It'll be a free event. Any questions on funding or anything at all school construction related from anyone? Yes, sir.
You didn't discuss it, but my understanding is when you're seeking, like I'm in Portsmouth, so we get a 35% reimbursement currently. If we apply for any of the bonus programs, like health and safety, we can't say with certainty to our council that we're assured we're going to get the 40%. We can say we're going to get the 35%, but we can't say we're going to get the 40%, or possibly more, depending if we can squeeze it other way. Why is that? Why can't we say to the council we're sure that, as presented, we've been assured by the building authority that we can qualify for the 40%?
It's a great question. So I'll answer it two ways. The first way is we do have, if you pose you outline your project to us in a letter. We can say if you do this, you'll get your bonus. That has satisfied many. The reason we don't guarantee it up front is because what happens if you, let me go back to this for a second. So each of these bonuses has conditions to it. And we can't guarantee that you're going to meet that condition now. So for example, let's say we were to approve you, and if these bonuses begin to expire December 30th of 23, but you start your work on January 1st of 24, you'll miss your bonus. So we can't guarantee anything because you may not make it. For some of these, in order to qualify, it's either 25% of the project is of that bonus or $500,000, whichever is lower. What if you only do $400,000 of health and safety on some large project? Again, we can't guarantee it, but the template we've used, which has answered the concerns for town, they've accepted that. So again, if you spell out, we're going to do this, X, Y, Z on these dates. If we do this, will we get the bonuses? And we can respond, yes. If you do this, you'll get your bonuses. But globally, we can't apply them ahead of time because you might start late. There's what's not here. There's in Rhode Island general law, there's eligibility for reimbursement. So you need to have a project manager for all projects over $1.5 million. Well, if you don't have one, you don't get anything. So there's other conditions that we can't just globally say you're going to achieve them, but we will work with you to make sure that you get whatever letter or whatever support you need to get the town council to move forward. Yes, ma'am.
Mario, could you talk a little bit about managing your 5-year plan within this context? Because I think for school committee members, that's, we hear about the 5-year plan. I mean, in the past, we always had a 5-year plan. Sometimes that 5-year plan changed without our, but I think it's key for the planning piece for a school committee.
That's correct. So and if you don't have it, I would email your superintendent, get the latest 5-year plan. One of the strategies, especially to this is, and this is as a school committee member, I would always try to find projects or coordinate projects. So every year you're doing projects that are health and safety and educational enhancements at a minimum. So if your 5-year plan includes windows and roofs and a library, I would try to chunk it out over the years. So let me step back. To get these bonuses can be combined. So if you're doing a library in one school and a roof replacement in another, and you bring them together as one project, well, the roof will get the health and safety bonus, the library repair will get the educational enhancement, and then both will get 10% reimbursement. So I would strategize your 5-year plan from a financial lens. So how do we get at least 10% reimbursement on all our projects? And then that's how which might require you changing your priorities. The other piece is, as money becomes available, priorities change. So while Lincoln had a plan available we got approved May of 22, But that was with the anticipation of just having a revolving fund that we got the town to approve. Well, the town now has agreed to do $25 million for the gyms, the science labs. So again, priorities change because money becomes available. And again, the way to sell the town was, well, we can get at least 3 of those. Check, and they like that. We also did in Lincoln, we have a physical education center that's being built now that we were able to get the town to approve $825,000 for solar panels, because that gets other bonuses. There's a bonus that's not here, which is in our school construction regulations for energy improvements. And again, that with a combination of federal aid and state aid would actually, and believe it or not, it would cost the town $100,000 not to do the project. So again, the town showed up with the $800,000. We're going to have the first net zero energy school building in the state of Rhode Island, which will open later this summer. But more importantly, using this financial strategy to tell the town that if we don't do the building, we're going to miss out on $100,000 was very easy. It was passed in record time. So again, I would try to look at your plan through a financial lens, because the key is you ultimately need the town approval, right? And generally speaking, they care more about the money. They don't necessarily care about projects. They care about reimbursement.
Hi, I have a question, and I have 2 questions. The first one is, could you define what you mean by begin by December 30th? Does that mean you're starting stage 3, or does that mean that you have shovels in the ground?
Excellent. So this is perhaps the most common one we've received when we do our building committee meetings. We are trying to be as flexible as possible, so we want as many projects to qualify. What we're defining, and we've defined this for 5 years now in our guidance, it's a signed contract for construction. So whether you have a construction manager, a design build contract, just something that when you submit for housing aid, you can show us a document that you started before that date, it'll be honored. The reason we're doing that is we don't want someone to artificially just start taking windows out over the winter break to qualify. It doesn't make sense. So we've used the signed contract. I would say over the next 6 weeks, that date can change, so keep an eye on the state budget. If all goes well, it'll be extended either 6 months or another year, which would be great for all communities. But yeah, we are being as accommodating as possible for that. We will likely generate, because a lot of people can change over, some of these larger projects take 5 years to complete. So we want to have something perhaps this January, assuming they don't change the bonuses, where you can send a copy of this, the commissioner can sign it and confirm that you started, so you keep that with you, and then 5 years from now when you submit your project, you submit it with it, and then it shows that you've met and satisfied state law. But we're going to do that because a lot of people are concerned. There's a lot of money in that. We have some communities have asked, we've done like custom-made one-pagers. I can also send you the presentations that we used in Lincoln to get the voters to approve it, which has the general information. We can send a variety of like what the resolution looks like, so you literally grab it and give it to your. But I'll give it to Tim to send out. But that's been a really helpful tool.
Well, what we're encountering in Warwick is we bonded 2 years ago for mostly elementary schools HVAC building envelope, but the HVAC costs are astronomically high. I mean, we built in 27% escalation. They're coming in at 100% escalation. So consequently, we can only do X amount of projects. So the revolving capital fund, to me, makes perfect sense if we can do that. Instead of waiting to go back for another bond for those things, you can replenish that supply and then do one school, do another one, and you're not paying interest on it either.
That's right. The key is with a bond, you ideally would limit that to projects where there's no other funding source, like a new school. For smaller, like you don't want to bond for doors. I think this is where, but in some cases you don't have a choice because the town won't give you any other money, so you're forced to bond. The revolving fund helps you shift from that mindset because, and I like what you said, that you eliminate financing costs, which is about 50% is eliminated by using actual cash. So you can actually do more for a lot less money, and many of the towns really appreciate that. So yeah, I'll give it to Tim probably Monday, and then he'll send it out to the membership.
Resolutions that we should be getting from, in our case, towns, because we're regional, and then how, the timing of when that should go to the state house.
Okay, so normally you need 3 approvals to get your project going. You need state approval, you need General Assembly approval, and then you need voter approval. And that's assuming you've already gotten your, what is this? Your local approval. We don't need this. You can get those in any order. Traditionally, you would do stage 1 and 2. You would get ride approval, which dictates the number that we would reimburse. You take that number to the General Assembly, get them to approve it, and you get then voters to approve that. That's the traditional route. However, because the bonuses are set to expire, that's, for many, that is no longer viable to go that route. Some will now get their voter approval first, then go to the General Assembly, and then come to ride. Some will do you can go in any order. Now, for those, what community are you? Oh, okay. Oh, I've heard about your project. I'm excited. So let's do it. We'll use yours as an example. Because you are looking to get ride approval in December, you're one of those who has to flip the script now. You need to go to the towns soon, unless pending that they change the bonuses, but assuming they don't change the deadlines, you need to get town council approval, because that's the first step for them to do a not to exceed number, and then they would send that to your representatives and senators, who would introduce it at the General Assembly. Last year, the last day was May 18th. However, at the State House, they say one deadline, but you might be able to get it in. But I would reach out to your reps and senators, or maybe Tim. Is there a last day for these?
Bond issues will take it right up to the end.
All right, so good.
So that's not, and it's not counted against the reps' number of bills that we put.
Okay. Good. So in the session, again, it ends usually the third week of June. So you don't have a lot of time, but if you figure out your not to exceed number, usually, and I would work backwards, the town usually has several meetings before they pass a resolution or ordinance, so you want to work back from that. Then you would get General Assembly approval this session. That's the first of the 3. You would likely, what many are doing is, because we have the special election in November if you're in CD1, I believe, so is Lincoln. So November 7th likely would be your date. That way you're not incurring any additional cost to do a special election. And then you would get ride approval in December, so that your order is going to be General Assembly voters ride. Concurrently, because of these dates, you also need to go out to bid for items. I would suggest you don't wait until November to go out to bid, because all it takes is one bid protest and your thing is out the window, or some local delay. What we advise is that if you're doing your RFP, you would make it contingent on voter approval and put enough language to give you outs, but start sooner than later. You likely will have your not to exceed number in the next, if you don't, and I think I might know it, but it's, you will know that number, so you just put that in the RFP, so someone who's bidding knows what the most it would be, and then you make a contingent on both voter approval and ride approval, and then that would let you start before that deadline. Because in your case, you can get, you can get almost up to 80% temporarily, which would be amazing for Bristol Warren to get that through. So, yeah, and if anyone has specific ones, you can email. We can do it now, but everyone has a timeline that's a little bit different. The days of following the traditional process are almost out the window while these bonuses exist, because this is the time to do things of substance. The new high schools wouldn't be a reality without the state paying additional, and we have a lot of communities who have stepped forward and say, we want high schools, we want new middle schools, new elementary schools, things that hadn't been done for years in Rhode Island. So I hope that answers. Any questions?
So what determines, on the bonuses that you gave, what determines the expiration? I know we have to submit them by the December 30th. So how long do we have to fulfill the project?
Excellent. So you have until, if they don't change statute, you have until December 30th of 2028 to complete it. So you can begin, and this is where we'll likely create a form in January to verify that you've started, so you can keep it, and then up to 5 years from now you have to complete the work. So these major projects like your new high school will likely push up against that date. I think when we met early on with the project manager, we made it clear that it has to be done by the state, because in your case it's about $40 million of state aid that comes off the table if you don't meet that. So I think we'll be on schedule for Pawtucket. But again, some of the bills are moving back the deadline as well as the completion date. So we likely could have June 30th of 29 or December 30th of 29 if some of the bills pass in the next 6 weeks.
So on the owner's project manager, I'm in Westerly, and if I remember correctly, there were a few of them that vetted by Rhode, and we could choose one. So obviously, they're aware of all of these dates, and they're responsible for ensuring that we meet them. And I know we're talking about this at the table all the time, but is there regular communication between Rhode, your office, and the OPMs to make sure they're not missing anything?
So we have, and whether this is fortunate or not fortunate, it's really 3 OPMs that have the majority of work in Rhode Island. So you have Downs in Westerly. We meet with them almost daily because they're also working in Providence and they're working in Lincoln and others. So they're aware. Colliers and then Peregrine are probably the big 3. There are others. If you have an OPM that's not one of those 3, just remind them. Like those 3 we always talk to because they're always coming in for projects and they represent almost everyone. I think North Providence has left field, a new one. I think Barrington might have picked somebody. So those, I can't speak to whether their knowledge of this or not, but the other 3, this is front and center for all 3 of them. They're well aware of this. And Downs, and not touting them, I'm just saying that they are the ones who do the majority of work in Rhode Island. So just by default, because we're always meeting with them, they're well aware of this. And whatever we tell them for one district, they take that knowledge and apply to others. So I think Downs has Westerly, Lincoln, Newport, Exeter, West Greenwich, Providence. Colliers has about 10 of them. Peregrine has like 5. So it's like the majority of the state is those 3. So if you have one of those, I wouldn't worry about this. If you have someone else who may or may not know this, then you could have them reach out to us, or you can send an email to me if you want, and I'll let you know if we've discussed with them. But most of them are aware of this information.
I want to thank Mario for his presentation. Wealth of knowledge. Thank you, sir. And as he said, he's going to get that material to us, and we will disseminate it through the school committee chairs. And we'll have it on our website as well.